in 1994 in an office park in Los Altos, California, an engineer named Jeff Hawkins walked into a meeting carrying a block of wood. He had cut it in his garage the night before to the size of a deck of cards and glued a printout of a fake screen to the front. In the meetings that followed, he would pull it from his shirt pocket, tap it with a whittled chopstick, and pretend to check a calendar that did not exist. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind. 2 years later, that block of wood, made real, would become the fastest-selling computer product in American history to that point. Faster out of the gate than the television and the video cassette recorder had been. It put a working computer in the pocket of 10 million people who had never wanted one before. And it did something stranger. It taught the entire technology industry, Apple included, what a handheld computer was supposed to feel like. Every rectangle of glass in every pocket on Earth tonight is a descendant of that block of wood. The company that made it is gone. Most people under 30 have never heard its name. That name was Palm. And the part nobody tells you is not that Apple killed it. Apple did not kill it. By the time the iPhone arrived in 2007, Palm had already built a phone that did everything the iPhone did, some of it years earlier and some of it better, and insiders who saw both up close will tell you Palm's software was the more elegant of the two. This is not the story of a slow company run over by a faster one. It is the story of a company that had the future in its hands twice, patented it, shipped it, and then handed it to the people who buried it. The men who killed Palm were not in Cupertino. Some of them were the founders themselves. Every week, we tell the story of a company that built something the world still uses, then destroyed the people who trusted it. If that is your kind of story, the like and the subscribe keep them coming. To understand how far Palm fell, you have to understand how impossibly high it started. In the early 1990s, the pocket organizer was a graveyard of failure. The most famous corpse belonged to Apple itself. Its Newton message pad had been mocked on late-night television and in the newspaper comics for one reason. You wrote on the screen with a stylus, and the handwriting recognition guessed wrong often enough that it became a national joke. Everyone in the industry drew the same conclusion. Nobody wants a computer in their pocket. Hawkins drew the opposite conclusion. The machines were not too small. They were too ambitious. So he built the wooden block first and lived with it for months, timing how many taps it took to add an appointment, cutting any feature that did not earn its place. When the real device shipped in the spring of 1996, it was almost aggressively modest. It did 4 things: calendar, contacts, notes, and a to-do list. It cost $299, ran for weeks on 2 AAA batteries, and fit in a shirt pocket. It was called the Pilot. And instead of guessing your handwriting, it made you meet it halfway. Hawkins invented a stripped-down alphabet called graffiti, a set of single strokes you learned in an afternoon. And because you were writing in a language the machine already understood, it almost never got a letter wrong. That was the whole trick. Apple had spent a fortune teaching a computer to read human handwriting and failed. Hawkins spent almost nothing teaching humans to write in a way the computer could read, and it worked on the first try. More than 1 million pilots sold in the first 18 months, a pace no computer had ever managed. Doctors kept their patient lists on it. Lawyers billed from it. It became the first piece of computing that ordinary professionals carried the way they carried a wallet, out of habit, without thinking. Hawkins had not built a smaller computer. He had built the first one people were willing to touch all day. But here's the fact that decided everything that came after. Palm did not own itself. Hawkins had needed money to build the pilot, so in 1995 he had sold his tiny company to a modem maker called US Robotics for $44 million. 2 years later, in 1997, US Robotics was swallowed whole by a much larger networking corporation called 3Com, and 3Com did not understand what it now owned. To the executives running a business that sold Ethernet cards and routers, Palm was a rounding error, a cute gadget division buried 3 levels down in a company chart. Hawkins and his 2 closest partners, Donna Dubinsky and Ed Colligan, watched the most important product of the coming decade get managed like an accessory. They asked to be spun out as an independent company. They were told no. So in 1998, the 3 people who had invented the entire category walked out the front door to start over from nothing. The company kept the product. It lost the only people who understood why it worked. They called the new company Handspring, and what they built there is the hinge the whole tragedy turns on. Their new pocket computer, the Visor, had a slot in the back called Springboard. You could slide a module into it. A game cartridge, a camera, a pager, and in the year 2000, a module that turned the organizer into a working cellular telephone. Snap it in, and the thing in your pocket that held your calendar and your contacts could now make calls. Hawkins had almost casually sketched the smartphone. Not the idea of it, the working object. He followed it to its conclusion with a device called the Treo, which fused the phone and the organizer into a single unit with a tiny keyboard. And for a few years around 2002, the Treo was the most advanced pocket computer on the planet, the device every executive and every journalist carried. The smartphone, for a moment, was a thing invented and owned by 2 rival companies descended from the same wooden block. And in 2003, exhausted from fighting each other, they merged back together. The founders came home. On paper, the band was back. Underneath the reunion, the numbers had already told a wilder story, and it is the number that makes the ending unforgivable. In March of 2000, at the absolute peak of the dot-com mania, 3Com had finally spun Palm off as its own public company. The independence the founders had begged for and been denied 2 years too late. The stock was priced at $38. On its first day of trading, it touched $165. When the dust settled, Palm was worth about $53 billion. Read that again. A company that made pocket organizers was, for one afternoon, worth more than General Motors. It was worth more than its own former parent, 3Com, the corporation that had owned it outright a month earlier. It was worth more than Apple, which at that same moment was clawing its way back from near death. Palm sat on top of the entire technology industry, holding the pocket computer, holding the early smartphone, holding a brand every professional in America trusted. It had everything. What it did next is why we are telling this story instead of buying its products. The first wound was philosophical, and it split the company in half. To make a phone, you need software, and Palm software, Palm OS, had been designed in 1996 to run a calendar on 2 AAA batteries. It was never built to run a modern phone. Everyone inside knew it needed to be replaced, but replacing it meant betting the company on a years-long rewrite while competitors shipped. So in 2003, Palm did the thing that companies do right before they die. It could not decide, so it split the difference and split itself. It spun its software division off into a separate company called Palm Source and kept the hardware business under the Palm name. Now there were 2 Palms again, and they had opposite incentives. The hardware Palm wanted to jump to Microsoft's Windows software, which was newer. The software Palm needed the hardware Palm to keep buying its aging system. Within 2 years, the software company had been sold to a Japanese firm, and the crown jewel, the operating system that had defined an entire category, was gone, owned by strangers. Palm had cut off its own head to save on payroll. Then, in January 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and held up the iPhone. And the response from Palm's chief executive, Ed Colligan, is the most quoted sentence in the company's history, because he had said it out loud 2 months before the phone even appeared. Asked whether the personal computer companies now circling his industry could walk in and take it, Colligan laughed. "We have learned and struggled for years," he said, "figuring out how to make a decent phone. The PC guys are not going to just figure this out. They are not going to just walk in." He was not wrong that phones were hard. He was catastrophically wrong about who could not make one. The company that had taught the world what a pocket computer felt like now watched a computer company do to it exactly what it had done to Apple in 1996. Palm had built the first thing people were willing to touch all day. Apple built the first thing they could not put down. But Palm was not finished. And this is the turn that makes the story tragic instead of merely sad, because Palm did fight back, and for one shining moment, it nearly won. In 2007, the board brought in John Rubinstein, the engineer who had built the iPod for Steve Jobs, poached straight out of Apple to save the company. Rubinstein tore Palm OS out by the roots and started clean. What his team built, revealed at the electronics show in Las Vegas in January 2009, was called webOS, and the phone that ran it was called the Pre, a smooth riverstone of a device with a keyboard that slid out from underneath. And webOS did something the iPhone could not yet do. It ran your programs as a deck of cards you could flip through and toss away with a flick of your thumb. It could run several at once and switch between them instantly, while the iPhone still made you quit one app to open another. The people who saw it understood immediately. Palm had leapfrogged Apple. The cards, the swipe up to close, the gesture area at the bottom of the screen, the pull-down notifications, nearly every gesture your phone uses tonight was on that stage in 2009 on a Palm. The reviews were rapturous. The future, once again, belonged to the company that had invented the wooden block. And then Palm proceeded to lose it in the dumbest way imaginable. The software was finished. The hardware was not. The Pre shipped with a keyboard reviewers described as gummy and sharp, a body that creaked, and internals so underpowered that the beautiful card animations stuttered and lagged. The glass cracked. The headphone jacks failed. Worse than the flaws was where you could buy it. Palm had signed an exclusive deal with Sprint, the smallest of the 3 big American carriers, a network millions of buyers had no reason to be on. The iPhone had AT&T. Soon the fastest growing phone in America, Motorola's Droid, would have Verizon, the biggest carrier of all. Backed by a marketing war chest Palm could not dream of matching. Palm had the better operating system and strapped it to weaker hardware on the smallest network. At the exact moment, the 2 giants of the industry were spending hundreds of millions to bury anything in their path. The card interface reviewers loved could not be sold to anyone who was not a Sprint customer. And Sprint, watching the phone struggle, quietly stopped marketing it at all. The most advanced software in the industry died on a shelf almost nobody walked past. By early 2010, the money was running out. Palm had bet its survival on the Pre, and the Pre had not sold. And so, in April 2010, the company that had once been worth more than General Motors was sold to Hewlett-Packard, the printer and personal computer giant, for $1.2 billion. In its final independent quarter, the pioneer of the entire pocket computer age was worth roughly 2% of its peak. HP said all the right things. It promised to pour money into webOS, to put it on phones and tablets and even printers, to make it the third great mobile platform beside Apple and Google. For about a year, the people who built webOS believed they had been rescued. They had not. In 2011, HP shipped a webOS tablet called the TouchPad to compete with the iPad. It was rushed, it was slow, and it landed to reviews that ranged from lukewarm to brutal. And then the most senseless act in this entire story unfolded. HP had a new chief executive, brought in from the software world, who had never wanted the mobile business in the first place. On the 18th of August, 2011, 49 days after the TouchPad went on sale in the United States, 49 days, he stood on a conference call and announced that HP was killing it. Not only the tablet, all of it. Every phone, every tablet, the entire webOS hardware operation shut down. The operating system that industry reviewers had called the best in the business, that Apple's own former engineers had built, that carried the DINA of the wooden block from 1994, was switched off in under 2 months, tossed aside as a rounding error by a printer company that had paid $1.2 billion for it, then decided it could not be bothered. Later, HP would write down almost the entire value of the purchase. More than $3 billion in total losses on its short, disastrous romance with the pocket computer. The remaining touchpads were dumped in a fire sale at $99, and in the final insult, people finally lined up to buy them. Not because they wanted webOS, but because it was the cheapest tablet on earth. There is a coda, and it is the strange kind of afterlife that only the best ideas get. The operating system did not die. In 2013, the Korean electronics company LG bought what was left of webOS for a rumored fraction of what HP had paid, and quietly did the one thing nobody at Palm or HP had managed. It shipped webOS to hundreds of millions of people, not in a phone, in a television. If you have turned on an LG Smart TV in the last decade and flipped through the apps as a row of cards, you have used webOS. The interface Palm invented for the phone in your pocket now lives on the wall of your living room, running one of the best-selling television lines in the world, and almost nobody who uses it knows where it came from. The brand had its own separate afterlife. In 2015, a Chinese manufacturer, TCL, bought the Palm name and, in 2018, put it on a tiny credit card-sized phone meant to be a companion to your real phone. It sold poorly and vanished. The name Palm now belongs to a company in China. The software Palm belongs to a company in Korea. The men who invented both scattered years ago. There is no Palm left to own the thing Palm made. So, what killed Palm? It was not Apple. Palm had the smartphone in the year 2000, 7 years early, and the better smartphone software in 2009, a year late. It was not that the pocket computer was a bad idea. Everyone reading this is holding the proof it was the biggest idea in modern technology. Palm died the way the great companies die, from the inside, one self-inflicted wound at a time. It let a networking company own it as a gadget. It drove out the 3 people who understood it, then reabsorbed them too late. It cut off its own software to save money, and the software was the whole company. Its chief executive told the world the computer makers could not build a phone, weeks before the greatest computer maker on earth built the best one anybody had ever seen. And when it finally did build something better, it bolted that miracle to broken hardware on the wrong network and sold it to a company that switched it off in 49 days. Every fatal choice was made in a boardroom by people reading a spreadsheet, and every one threw away something a garage full of believers had built. Somewhere tonight, in a desk drawer, a Palm Pilot is sitting in the dark silver and gray. Its little green screen long dead, its graffiti alphabet remembered by no one. And a few feet away, glowing on the couch, is a phone that flips its open programs like a deck of cards, and a television across the room doing the exact same thing. Both of them speaking a language a man invented on a block of wood in his garage in 1994, a language every screen you own now speaks, under a name none of them carry. Palm did not lose because it was behind. It lost because it was first, twice, and could not survive its own success either time. The idea outlived the company by 30 years and counting. The company could not outlive its own boardroom. One last thing before you go. Palm was not the only company to invent the future of computing and then hand it, gift-wrapped, to the rival that got rich off it. There was another firm in this same era that built the graphical desktop, the mouse, the click, the window, everything you have stared at every day of your working life, and watched two young men walk out of a demo and turn it into the two largest companies in the history of money. It got nothing. That story is next. And if you ever owned a Palm, if you ever learned graffiti, or slid a module into a springboard, or flipped through those cards on a pre, the industry forgot where its future came from. You do not have to. Tell me what you carried. I read everything.